Today we're talking about selling SEO the right way. And I think you guys have a great conversation coming ahead because I'm being joined by SEO Reseller Sales Manager William Kramer. So for
Hey
a lot of
guys.
you guys, you've probably already worked with him. And for those that have not met me, because I haven't been as on the phones as I would like, my name is Bernard San Juan. I've been the manager of SEO Reseller for the past 8 years. And I've got 2 decades worth of web experience under my belt. So, yeah, I'm a fossil.
Not really.
There are advantages to it and some disadvantages, but I think the fact my age is, I think, one of the things that give me an edge whenever I sell because most decision makers
Yeah.
for agency partners tend to fall somewhere within my age range. I'll let Will do his own introductions.
Well, yeah, because that would be the safer option for me.
Yeah, that is true. That is
But
true.
no, jokes aside, been a good number of years here at SEO Reseller, and I've worked with a good number of you, but not most of you. It's been a while since I've actually worked directly with a few partners, but Uh, the best thing about this webinar is this is mostly what we tackle at the very beginning of every relationship here. And it's really how do we sell SEO?
Mhm.
And so we'd like to share with you how we sell SEO the right way.
Right. Now, before we jump into the discussion flow, I just wanted to point your attention to the bit.ly link at the bottom right, where it says bit.ly/kickstart dash call. So if right after the webinar you've got any questions that didn't get
Yep.
addressed in the Q&A section of the conversation, feel free to give us a call, and we'll be more than happy to accommodate. So let's jump into the flow of the discussion. Selling is more than just a service.
That's
when
correct.
when you approach sales, it shouldn't have to be about how many blog posts am I getting, how many
Keywords are we
right, how many
targeting? And
keywords am I targeting, how much on page are you writing, or here's 20 pages of meta, or here's 20 meta titles, 20
Yep.
meta descriptions for you. Because let's face it, most businesses don't understand what that means for
right.
them.
Yeah.
And so you need to understand how to differentiate between your commodity, your product, and the value that it sells. So focus on the process and showcase how that workflow works to solve the need of your client. And the essential steps that we're going to cover in this conversation are going to be abridged versions of our SEO conversations and our sales conversations, because if we had 16 hours to talk about SEO,
Yep.
it wouldn't be enough. And if we had 16 hours to talk about selling,
It would
it,
definitely
right.
not be
So we
enough.
really sort of strip this down to the bare bones,
Yeah.
just so that we could give you the highest value conversation you could get in an hour. And so we're going to talk about knowing what you're selling. Again, commodity versus product versus service.
Yep.
Doing a thorough prep before you sell, because you need to prep to win or be ready to lose to someone
Someone who
that
did.
did. Yeah.
Yep.
Learning how to build desire for your product and service. And building desire is about building up the positive feelings that they might have towards you, your product, and your service. I always like to say people buy into a salesman before they buy into what
So
he sells.
exactly, which leads you to close. And from that close, you don't want it to seep in any type of buyer's remorse, and you go for the reinforcement.
Right. And so let's jump right into it. What are you selling? What are they selling, Will?
Well, they're selling not just SEO, but they're selling something that will mean more to what they think it really means.
Yeah.
So I'm being cryptic.
So before we jump into specifics, let's take it from a couple of examples, and I'll do one, and Will do one for you guys. Um, Imagine you find yourself at McDonald's. Why are you there? Chances are, it's not because you're full. You're probably hungry, and that's probably the problem you're trying to solve at the moment.
Yeah.
But if it was just hunger you were trying to solve, then McDonald's would be just as good as any other place, and yet you wind up being at McDonald's anyway. And so the question is, why are you there? It's not for the number of ounces of mustard, or for the number of pickles, or for the count of lettuce leaves inside the hamburger. Probably not. It could be for some of you if you are uniquely special, but probably not, right? When most people go to McDonald's, they're looking to alleviate their hunger, but they're also looking for something on the cheap. So, something affordable. They want something fast. They don't
Really
want to
fast,
wait
yeah.
15 to 20 minutes for a meal prep. Uh, and they're looking for a consistent experience. And so those things that are not part of the commoditized pricing for the burger, that's what comprises added value, right? That is what McDonald's is selling. They're not just selling you a burger.
Yeah.
They're selling you a consistent experience.
Now, another example for us here is Starbucks.
Yeah.
So
I would have loved to take this example.
Right.
I love coffee.
But I'll still use your story.
Yeah,
because...
I will be charitable. I should be able maybe I should be able to deduct this off my taxes by being so generous to let you take a coffee example.
But with Starbucks though, Burns had a story a while back where he used to frequent this one Starbucks branch, and then for a good number of months he wasn't showing up.
Yeah.
I think it was something to do with schedule, or you happen to be in a different place, but you just stopped going to that particular branch.
It was 4 blocks away.
You started to go to the one that was
and
closest.
there was a cafe that opened right across the street, which was not a Starbucks. It was a small mom and pop. It was a small mom and pop cafe.
But then after a few months, you happened to go back to the very same branch
because the
you used
mom
to.
and pop cafe was closed on a holiday.
And you happened
my
to be
coffee
there.
fix, right?
And then when you came in, they remembered you.
Yeah.
Did they even remember the drink that you normally order?
Yes.
Oh, that's crazy.
So they remembered my name. They remembered the kind of drink I liked, and it made such an impression.
Right, but that's the reason why most people go to Starbucks, or some people go to Starbucks. But you can definitely get something where it's really personalized. From the coffee cups, they say your name when you walk in the door. When you step out, they'll still say your first name. They like the ambience. The setting's always different. It's so unique and it's particular or unique to Starbucks itself. They want the predictability, and they want something that's also consistent or better than the previous experience.
Right. And I mean, if we're talking Starbucks value, I mean, just take a look at their big, hairy, audacious goal, right? The statement says, to nurture the human spirit, 1 cup, 1 person, 1 neighborhood at a time, right? Amazing. The word coffee doesn't even appear in it, because they know that the coffee is the vehicle for facilitating the experience, but it is not the experience.
Right.
So when it comes to SEO, don't just offer a service. Be like Starbucks. Offer the value. In Starbucks' case, the value is the experience. In McDonald's case, the value is in the consistency.
Right.
In SEO, the value could be in more brand visibility, in generating more leads, in acquiring more foot traffic, in getting the phone to ring more, in getting more inquiries into your mailbox, and ultimately more sales. Because SEO is marketing, and people treat this like an investment. So it is only natural that they're going to look for a return on that investment. And so you have to approach your SEO pitch from the perspective of value, not from the perspective of commodity.
Exactly.
So when you talk value, there are 3 good angles to approach value from. One might be you're addressing an opportunity. Another one might be you're solving a problem, or a third one might be because you're easing a friction. And I'll give you guys great examples of non-SEO related companies first, just to break down the concept. When it comes to addressing an opportunity, Uber is the king of addressing an opportunity. We know it as the ride-sharing economy. We know it as the sharing economy.
They started that.
Yeah, we know that it's a ride-hailing app, but that wasn't what it was before. It was a limo hiring app. So the founders of Uber realized that there were dozens and dozens and dozens of these limos and limo drivers that were just hanging around parked waiting for their next appointment. And they realized that, wow, that idle time is really a lot of lost opportunity. What if we could turn that into money? And so they started forming partnerships with these drivers to get them bookings via the app, and that's how Uber started. You used to be able to rent limos on the Uber app. You used to be able to grab a limo on the Uber app, and then they became more mainstream until they evolved into something that we know today to be ride sharing. What Uber did essentially, and why the model worked, was because they addressed an opportunity, the time that was being wasted, that wasn't getting converted into revenue.
Exactly. Now the second one is about solving a problem, and we've chosen Airbnb. So I actually didn't know this. Bernard was the one that pointed this out, but the airlines industry before, it was pretty hard to get a flight because of how expensive, right? So you really have to plan a year. A lot of planning involved and a lot of money too. But
I traveled in 2003, and I remember my My flight to and from Europe cost me $1,800. That price tag is unimaginable today.
Right.
But way back then, that was a good deal.
Exactly. And Southwestern Airlines.
Yeah, Southwest Airlines, right.
Basically started to lease out all their planes. I mean, sorry, they were leasing planes.
Right.
They didn't own the fleet.
Right. So Southwest Airlines came up with an entirely new model for budget airlines, and the reason they could compete was they didn't have to buy a fleet of planes to start competing.
And to make up for everything.
Yeah, they leased their fleet, and it allowed them to kill the pricing, forcing everybody to start getting more competitive. And so the budget airline industry was born, right? All of a sudden, there's this economy around budget airlines, but there was a problem.
Exactly.
It was cheap to get somewhere,
but it wasn't cheap to stay there for as long as you wanted.
Exactly, and that's an example of the problem that Airbnb had solved.
Yeah, with the two founders, what they basically did was in San Francisco, they saw an opportunity for all these hotels that were so expensive, all these conferences that were happening there, and so they started to open up spaces, and it evolved into this app that allowed you this affordable and easy way to book for rooms. And the nice thing too is it doesn't have that hotel touch, but it does allow you to make, especially when Japan.
Yeah. I tell people when they travel, especially to Japan,
Airbnb.
Yeah. On your first travel, do an Airbnb, don't take a hotel.
And I took that advice.
Yeah, the local knowledge of your host is just amazing. Right. But what Airbnb essentially did is it did for the hospitality industry what the airline industry had done a decade before.
Right.
The airline industry had made traveling affordable, but the hospitality industry never kept pace. And so the price of stays per night at a hotel were still super expensive.
Yeah, pretty steep.
Airbnb disrupted that industry because they solved the problem. The problem was, okay, I can afford to get there, but I can't afford to stay there. By solving that, they revolutionized the industry.
Exactly.
Another great example of selling value is easing of friction. And the king of this, in my opinion, is Amazon. Amazon is terrific at easing friction. And the best example of devices that ease friction are the Amazon Dash buttons. And they sort of work like this. Will, you're a new dad, right?
Yep.
So what commodity do you foresee you will need over the next 2 years?
Beer.
Not the answer I'm expecting.
Well, no, diapers, milk, to be serious if my wife was listening.
Right. Right. So yeah, diapers, right?
Yeah,
and maybe beer. I'll give that some credit, but diapers and beer.
Right.
And what Amazon did was it paid attention to the data that the users were feeding every time they went into the system. And they would realize, like, take for example, a guy like Will would go to Amazon on a pretty predictable basis. And at every purchase, always order diapers.
Right.
And so without soliciting, without Will doing any activity, they would send a dash button to his home. And now all of a sudden, problem solved. Every time Will realizes he's down to his last 3 diapers, he just presses the dash button. If he were in the right city, it would get delivered on the same day.
Yeah.
What incredible easing of friction. So let's flip that around and let's talk SEO. In SEO, how do you address an opportunity? Well, a great example of being able to address an opportunity is first mover advantage.
Right.
When you do a search for the service you provide, the commodity that you have, the product that you sell, who are you competing with on the first page of Google? And if you realize that there are unoptimized results on the first page, and it's easy to spot an unoptimized result.
Yeah.
They have meta titles and meta descriptions that end in ...
Or appended, or they're starting to get
Right, they're
truncated.
appended.
Yeah.
That means that there are unoptimized results on the first page, which means first mover advantages are still possible.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not a first mover solution, it's a first mover advantage. You gain an opportunity over the competition. That's one way SEO adds value to your business. Another way that SEO adds value to a business is by helping you solve a problem. What if you've got a problem with you know that your industry is growing, but your market share is not? What if you know that the number of potential customers for you are increasing, but your competitors are getting the lion's share? This is a problem, and this is a problem that you need to address. And this is another example where SEO comes in. If your problem was your client base feels pretty narrow or weak, SEO is a great strategy for growing a larger client base. Another way is easing a friction. What attracts a customer better than by making it easy for them to find your location?
Exactly. Or have a very unique search term.
Yeah.
Put it in, and they find exactly what they're looking for
Right.
right on your site.
Like, I mean, especially if you're in a touristy area or whatnot, the number of toy stores I've frequented just by finding them on a map are incredible, right? Even the restaurants. Like, I will find myself walking somewhere, craving a specific type of cuisine, and then I find myself doing a search, and I walk into a location. Because the location had eased my friction, had made it easy for me to find them, I become a patron, I become a customer. And so by easing my friction by that business easing my friction as their customer, they solve a problem for me. They gain more customers. And this is sort of how SEO works. You get optimized on the snapback, you ease your potential customers' friction in terms of finding a service provider.
So now the question is, are you prepared to sell?
Yeah. So we sort of wrapped up the section about knowing what you sell, and that really is summarized just by talking value. Don't talk commodity. Don't talk product. Talk value. But once you've talked value and you're preparing to walk into your pitch or get into your sales call, are you ready to sell?
Exactly. So what you need to make sure is that you're actually preparing for the sale or the pitch, because if you don't prep, someone else that does is going to win.
Right.
So
the other is, if you haven't Googled your prospect prior to walking into their office, you can bet they've Googled you.
Exactly, because you're supposed to be the agency or the provider. They'll test you out. They'll see if you're actually there. So the first thing you need to do, and this is actually not in order, really depends where you are at that point, especially before the prep, but you have to ensure that you have 6 to 10 great questions before getting into that pitch.
Right.
And a tip is to make it as unique as possible, because what you want to achieve is that when they hear it, oh, wow, that's a question nobody's ever asked me before.
Right. I think the very definition of a terrific question or a great question is something that makes somebody pause and think, wow, I've never been asked that before, right? You ask a typical question, you will get a typical answer.
Right.
And so if you want to be memorable, what you want to do is ask an atypical question. And it doesn't have to be so far off left field that you look weird.
Yes.
It just has to be constructed genuinely, thoughtfully. The 6 to 10 great questions you have should have a purpose, though. An example is figuring out who you're talking to.
Exactly.
If you ask questions that try to unearth authority, that try to qualify the authority of the person that you're talking to, and this is by giving them me talk, what you'll discover is that an employee and a founder will talk about their relationship with the business in profoundly different ways.
Right.
They will talk about their goals in the business in profoundly different ways. And so by knowing who you're talking to, you unearth the authority of the person that you're speaking with, but you've also given them airtime. It is so important in a sale that you provide what's called 50% time. You don't talk more than 50% of the time.
Exactly.
And this rapport building technique is called me talk. The other thing that you could do is, and this is by far one of my favorites,
and something you're really good at, despite me not knowing how you pull that off, because you're a pretty unique person.
But every mom likes to think that of their kids, right?
Well, yes, true. But like, do you guys know for a fact that if you walk into Bernard's office, it's filled. This guy's a Transformers fan.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
169 toys in my office, and that's 25% of my collection.
Exactly.
But I think being able to find something in common with your prospect is easy. And this is one of my advantages, being 40. Oh, I know you guys couldn't tell by my photo. I know. But I think when you've got a lot of experience, it opens up a lot of opportunities to have something in common with the person that you're talking to. And my take on common ground is it is an incredible accelerator of the bonding process.
Yeah.
So an example is by giving me time to one of my current favorite agency partners, I was able to figure out that he grew up in a conservative family. My family is pretty conservative.
Perfect. Yeah. Just like you.
And he had lived in Southeast Asia for 4 years. right? And that's my neck of the woods.
Yeah, it sure is.
So, and that gave us an incredible amount of things that we could talk about and ice break over. And he was very generous with information, so generous that he should be able to deduct it off of his tax returns. He was very generous with information. And I loved it. And by the time we were done with the conversation, I wasn't needing to book the next call. He was booking the next call. Terrific. Right. Another one is I had a female client who I paid a second visit to, and on my second visit, she had this terrific tan. Right. And so it's not about flattery. We don't teach flattery as a rapport building technique. But it was about, if you pay attention to details and read between the lines, it gave me an opportunity to ask, let's call her Miss M. Wow, Miss M, great tan. How did you ever get that? Right? And I wasn't trying to be flattering. I was genuinely curious. Because how did you get that tan?
I want one too.
And I discovered that she was into her second year of learning how to surf. And incidentally, I was in my fourth year of learning how to surf. And just by discovering that, the dynamics of our relationship had changed. We had gone from a very professional, cordial relationship with each other to something that became super personal, super friendly.
Exactly.
And so common ground, you only need one. And it's a terrific accelerator of the bonding process.
And a few other questions can revolve about identifying why they're talking to you in the first place. It helps you to qualify and establish a need. An example I have was, you'd think that when you figured out the person you're talking to wasn't the decision maker, you'd start thinking, okay, I'm pretty much wasting my time here. But it turned out that the person I was talking to happened to be the son of the owner,
right?
And who was about to inherit the business in a few years. So what basically happened was, he wanted to prove to his father that by inheriting the business, he could take it in a whole new direction, make things work for them and the family, take care of. So there was a strong personal need. And I had assumed basically that, no, he had something to prove because he works for his dad. It wasn't the case. There was something more to it. That was his personal need.
Right. The other thing is knowing why they're talking to you. If you are transparent about who you are, what service you provide, then it's a safe bet. They probably didn't offer you 30 minutes of their time or 15 minutes of their time because they were looking to bet on a horse race. They probably want something that's marketing or SEO related. So what you need to figure out is, so set that aside because that should be clear. You need to know, why give you that time, right? What kind of personal need are they looking to address? Are they looking for a provider they can trust, or one that will provide them transparency, or one that will drive results? Or is it all of the above? Or is one more important than the other? But when you're identifying why they're talking to you, you need to find out the personal motivation behind it versus just the practical reasons behind it.
Exactly. Which directly ties into what you're supposed to be asking next. And it's about finding out how the business becomes more successful by subscribing to a service like yours, or to be with a provider like
that's just you being, by the way, modest, right? By subscribing to a service like mine. What you're really telling them is, subscribe with me.
Yeah.
But by saying subscribe to services like me, you're just softening you're just softening an assumptive pitch
right at the beginning, and your intent is to qualify because you're going to have to figure out all of the buying criteria. Relatable to the wedding analogy, Burns, you use this a lot.
It's the wedding analogy, right? A wedding can be fast, beautiful, or cheap. It will never be all three. If you want a wedding that is fast and beautiful, it will not be cheap. If you want it fast and cheap, it won't be beautiful. And if you want it beautiful and fast, it won't be cheap, right?
That's
right. You'll always get 2 out of 3.
Right.
But the other thing that you get to figure out is, normally timeline and budget are mutually exclusive. And so if you realize that there's more importance on time frame, the budget is typically negotiable. And if the budget is pretty strict, then the time frame is pretty negotiable. But you're still unearthing critical information to your sale.
Exactly. And lastly, and which is also one that you can ask right at the beginning, because it sort of adjusts everything and gets a lot answered. But you can ask if they've had experience with a service provider like you. Now, you can, again, go after a rapport building technique, which is the me talk, but you're also qualifying across the board.
Right. You are figuring out whether the person you're talking to is the decision maker, but more important than that, if they've subscribed to a provider like you, then they already know what they're buying. They already understand what SEO is.
Yeah.
And so if they've done SEO before, they're qualified, right? It's an insta qualify question.
There is a need, definitely.
Now, all qualifying must reveal four of the most important things to your sale, and that's about budget, authority, need, time frame. And just to help you guys out by making this a bit more concrete, we gave you guys some sample questions that you could ask.
So what are your criteria for making a decision on a provider like us? Or how much do you allocate for your marketing spend?
Yeah, both questions are a bit softball.
Yep.
And you'll discover that people are not very apprehensive when you're asking questions that are delivered softly this way.
Yeah.
When you have an aggressive budget question, people tend to perceive that you're a bit too salesy and a bit too aggressive, and so they withhold information from you.
Right.
And so phrasing them this way gets them to open up budget conversations better.
And going back to establishing whether they've worked with someone before, some of you, and if I remember, are a little adverse to working with people that have actually had experience with other providers.
Mhm.
It is a good thing, because then if you ask questions like this to clients who've worked with other providers, they're willing to answer it. They
Yeah.
will. In fact, the buying criteria already sits here when you ask for the criteria. And then how much do you allocate for your marketing spend? Easy. They already were
Right.
spending. They just need to tell you what it was.
Right.
Then you go into authority. How did you get started in the company? And this is what Bernard was saying earlier, when an employee and a business owner will answer that differently.
Yeah, very
And more profoundly,
differently.
right? So a business owner is basically going to tell you, well, there was this one trip I was on and it was inspiring. My wife was, so it goes all across the board.
Right.
But that's the business owner, and that's what the business means to him.
Yeah, it's part of his life. Right?
Exactly. The employee will read his resume.
Yeah.
But the second question is all about, what does the success of this campaign mean to you and the company as a whole?
Yeah.
Now, the business owner will actually answer
We'll give you one answer
with one.
Because those are essentially two questions in one. And an employee will give you varying answers, but essentially a founder will give you one answer for both.
Right.
Founders are very personally and emotionally tied to their businesses.
And then if you're going after need and you want to figure that out, ask
Again,
them.
the low ball question, right?
Yep. Have you worked with an SEO provider before?
Insta qualified.
And is SEO a part of your business hygiene?
Because if it is, that means that they're already doing some SEO, and they're probably just trying to figure out, okay, so how do I upgrade this? How do I up my game on SEO? And maybe I need a provider that does it for me.
And if you do get a response of no to both questions, that means you're going to have to help them identify what the opportunities of SEO are.
Right. And so that's why you go back to knowing what you sell, right? You have to
Right.
talk value.
And lastly, you've got time frame. So if you were to rate the need for urgency on this project on a scale of 1 to 5, where would it be?
Right. Or as I would like to say it, on a scale of yesterday to 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Hey, where would you rate the urgency for this project?
Of course, yesterday. But how fast do you want to see the results of your SEO?
It tells you whether the budget is negotiable, in my opinion, right? When I ask this question, not only does it give me a hint of time frame, but it also tells me whether the budget is firm or negotiable.
Right.
So just before we move forward, let's recap what we've covered so far. So we talked about differentiating between commodity, service, product, and value.
Right.
And we strongly encourage you that you talk value. Once you understand the value of the service, you need to prep to sell or be ready to lose to someone that did. You've connected with your prospects, you've given them me time, you've executed some rapport building techniques, you have 6 to 10 great questions in your pocket. You didn't try to wing your conversation.
And because of that, you've discovered their needs.
Right. Once you've got all of that down pat, it's time to build desire. And building desire goes back to the first portion of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What are you selling? And when you sell, you need to emphasize what their need is for the service. Remember that what they need for the service is not, oh, I could use 2 more blogs. Oh, I could use 5 meta titles. Oh, I could use 20 unique meta descriptions.
I'd like to rank for 20 versions of this one keyword.
Right. It's super rare. Most of the time, the business's need is to create more revenue, to create more leads, to drive more traffic, and so on and so forth. Since it's not 1999 anymore, SEO should really be part of the hygiene of your business. And so what does SEO do for your business? When you talk to your prospect, not only do you find out that not only do you qualify them for their SEO needs, you want to find out what is the business need for SEO. And an example of a business need for SEO is acquisition.
Right.
I want more leads. When you want more leads, your project manager may piece together a workflow, an SEO workflow for you guys that involves standard SEO hygiene, tools integration, and continuous optimization. What do these mean? Standard SEO hygiene is just making sure that the pages you want to rank have meta titles, that they have meta descriptions, and that the purpose of the page matches the purpose of the keywords that you want to rank for it.
Right.
Tools integration just means we make sure that you can prove the value of your work through data captured on the Search Console, on analytics, and on Tag Manager. And continuous optimization might be you acquiring citations or acquiring links to your business or just building on the content month on month on month.
And optimizing all the content you're doing. Yeah.
Why would we focus on this? For businesses that are trying to address acquisition needs or just, increasing your client base, getting more leads, the bottom line of SEO is that as back then, so it's still true today, content still remains the most powerful ranking factor.
Content is king.
Yeah, and it helps in establishing your authority, but it is also the foremost way you provide value to the customers of that business.
Right.
And so our workflow focuses on content because we want to make sure that A, your content matches the motivation behind the search, but B, that your content is also better than your competitors. Because if you want to appear on the first page, your content has to be as good as or better than the people that sit on the first page.
So even despite having a workflow like this, you're not itemizing everything.
Right. The other way to continue this conversation is to track the right metrics.
Yep.
Because you could put in great content, but if you're not measuring how much improvement in search rankings you've achieved, if you're not measuring how many impressions, how many click-throughs, how much additional traffic, how many leads were captured, then you're not creating a cost-justifying tool for your service. And this is where transparency really matters. And for some of you, you may not be aware, we actually put this all together in a dashboard for you so that your client doesn't have to go into their analytics, their search console, their tag manager to take a look at the results of the work that you do. We integrate them seamlessly into a dashboard where they can view the results of the work in real time. And that's incredible value. Now, let's continue a value conversation. What if the person that you're talking to, what if your prospect is looking to improve local visibility? Well, you know what? Easy. Your project manager may recommend a workflow that involves the creation of business listings, the creation of citations for your website, and the implementation of local schema against the website. Not a lot of people know that local schema, it's not as technical or difficult as it sounds, but appearing in the snack pack is actually an easy win. It's not a very difficult goal to achieve. So this is why this workflow focuses on the implementation of schema, because appearing in a snack pack in a local search result is easier than most people think. And if you think about it, the snack pack is sort of a rich snippet.
Yeah, actually,
right?
Yeah.
It's an improved search result, which means it gets better click-through. And so that's why we would recommend that workflow. And in the same way that we're teaching you this in the webinar, this is precisely how you should pitch it. And nothing more and nothing less when you do.
So actually, Bernard, you're not even trying to sound technical. It's about the why.
Yeah, I agree. If we published any of my calls with clients, what you guys will realize is whether the call is 30 minutes or whether the call is an hour, I never spend more than 25% of the total call allocation time to talking about SEO.
Right.
Not because I'm trying to dance around an issue, but that's because that's not what matters to them. What matters to them is why should they buy this and what change or impact or value does it add to their business. And I keep the conversation focused there. Another example of a goal that they might challenge you with are conversions. What if your client is an e-commerce website? And this will typically require some of our most competitive services where you require advanced technical optimization, which is really just your SEO hygiene, but competitive. Meaning it doesn't just take a look at your meta title, your meta description, and your content and evaluate that whether it's optimized or not. It also takes a look at your competitors' meta title, meta description, and content, and are theirs better than yours?
Right.
There's a rule to SEO that we've been talking about for like 8-9 years now, and it's if you want to rank for positions 1 to 3, then your page and your content have to be as good as or better than the guys that are sitting at positions 1 to 3.
Yeah.
The next one is keystone content creation. And keystone content creation is the gradual improvement of your on-page content until it is the best content about that subject matter out there on the web. And so your content might get built over time. We might add 500 words to it, 800 words to it. We might add images and videos to it. But keystoning your content means turning it into the best content that can be found about that topic on the web.
Yeah.
And then, of course, guaranteed DA link building. And what I like to compare this to is imagine your on page is a 4,000 horsepower engine. That engine ain't going nowhere without fuel.
That's
right. And that's precisely what link building is.
Right.
It fuels the engine. Yes, content is the most powerful ranking factor, but something has to help it along and help it gain momentum. And typically that's the link building. Now, why do we say guaranteed DA link building? Because we're focusing on the quality of the links more than just the volume and variation of the links. In short, we guarantee the minimum authority that we acquire to the links or the vouchers that your website gets. Why follow this workflow? Because it leverages on making the content of your site better than your competitors. It creates a page that's better, ideally the best out
Right.
there, or what we call 10x in SEO strategy. And it augments the content of your client's most important pages to increase their relevance. Again, you want to be on page 1, you need to be as good as or better than the people that are on page 1.
This is actually a concept that we're working with right now, and you'll see that for most of
Right.
the conversations with your project managers. If there's anything, Bernard, that you want to help us with when it comes to talking to clients about keystone content, I think I'd tie it back to your analogy with the 4,000 horsepower engine.
Yeah.
It's like it's sitting in the garage. It's a great car for when it was released or when the content was released, but it's stuck in your garage.
Yeah.
And you think that because you let it sit there, it's a classic.
Yeah, it becomes a classic.
It becomes a classic. But then something comes along that's better, that's stronger, has more relevance to today. And that's where you end up.
Yeah, and before you know it, becomes a vintage.
Yep. And bye-bye. It's there in your garage. Nobody to see it.
So, but if you guys listen to how we are talking about SEO, we're not talking to you about it in superbly technical terms, right? We're talking to you about it in base principles, in fundamentals. And when you take on SEO conversations, they really just have to be this basic.
Yeah.
Most business owners will not understand nor want very severely technical conversations when it comes to SEO. There will be those rare occasions where you will have a very technical decision maker behind the scenes.
Right.
But by and large, for majority of your pitches, you will rarely require more than the similar conversation that we've just done with you on this webinar.
Exactly.
So if you've built desire successfully, how do you close and reinforce? Will, how do we close and reinforce?
Well, on our front, especially when we're talking to you guys, we definitely do our best to find out what the emotion is.
Yeah.
What was the core emotion for you guys reaching out to us? It isn't because how did you find us, but it's really where were you coming from? So even your buying criteria is important to us, but especially for the client. At this point, you need to understand why they did it and what the emotion is basically tied to.
At the start of the conversation, I think I mentioned people buy into the salesman before they buy into the sale.
Service or the product.
It is so important that you guys understand that people will buy into the salesman before they buy into the sale. And a lot of what influences the sale is how they feel about the salesman at this point in the conversation.
So there are a few examples here.
Yeah, just to make it concrete and actionable for them.
How do you feel now that we've discussed the strategy?
Right. And again, the key word here is how do you feel now that we've discussed the strategy?
How does this feel relative to your experience with the previous provider?
Yeah.
Right? Did our discussion make sense to you? And more importantly, for your business.
Right.
And then lastly, this is one that Rob does pretty well. Are you feeling good after the last few minutes or X amount of minutes?
And remember that you're not asking them about, did you understand everything? Do you now have a thorough understanding of SEO?
Have you learned more in this conversation?
Right. The cognitive information is not what will drive the sale. It is how they feel about you, the salesman, and this process that will determine whether you will walk away with a contract or not.
Right.
And so it's so important that you acquire their emotional buy-in, because all closes, all buying decisions are emotional in nature.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that you guys might have noticed is the questions prior to these sort of lure you into a yes, and that's called priming. It's called setting someone into a yes frame of mind, so that when you ask these questions, you get a yes.
Exactly. Because at this point, after establishing what the emotion is, or if you've shifted the emotion to an emotion you wanted, you can close the pitch. And in order for you to do that, you have to remember, this is your make or break moment. Also, another thing to remind you, as soon as you deliver your closing line, right, don't say anything. Stop talking. Because the first person who actually speaks loses.
Yeah. First person that talks after a closing line loses the sale. So it is so important that right after your closing line, shut up.
Exactly.
They're trying to thresh out how they feel about you. They're trying to thresh out how they feel about the information you just gave them. And this is why I don't recommend overloading someone with technical SEO information, because they will start, at this point, they will feel confused.
Right.
It's not that they will be confused, they will feel confused.
And then interrupt them while they're actually trying to figure out if they're going to commit to it, breaks it entirely. Right. There you go, start over again.
So some sample closing pitches, although I have to warn you guys, these are a bit softball compared to how I like to do them. I like very assumptive closes.
One of them's yours.
Yeah.
So
they're ours. These are yours now. You're free to use them. They're for you.
So the first one is, since we both agree that this will be positive to your business and to your client, would you like me to begin booking the work for you? We have slots opening this coming month. Now, we're still taking on work for the current month. Would you like me to pencil you in?
Soft, right? Very soft. And if you'll notice, they're not, some of them are always statement followed by a follow-up question, or question followed up by a statement, because you don't want to end a closing pitch in an open-ended question.
Right.
It can take you away from the direction of the close.
I'd love to turn this into a project intake conversation. Does Wednesday or Thursday work for you?
I like that statement and that closing remark, because you're telling them that you feel the same way. You feel good about talking to them too, and that you are being proactive about when you want to meet with them. And essentially, you're limiting the choice to, we're going to talk again.
Oh, yeah.
It's just Wednesday or Thursday, right? So this is another sales technique. It's called the choice paradox.
Exactly.
And we're not teaching you this so that you guys can bamboozle people into a sale. It's just that if you believe that your product or service genuinely add value to the customer that you're talking to, it is your moral obligation to close that sale to the best of your ability. And some of these are the best closing lines.
The last one I'd want you to read.
Okay. It's and I've literally used this line over and over. Have I done everything I can to earn your business today? I've never gotten a no, by the way, from that question. Like ever since I started selling way back in 05, 06.
Yeah.
I have never gotten a no to that question. If you rapport built correctly, if you gave them me time, if you checked on how they felt, when you were building desire, you will not get a no to this question at the closing pitch.
And this is a question that's uniquely you. You didn't pick this up from anybody else, did you?
No, but that's not unique to me. It is now ours. It is yours.
Well,
you may use it.
The point is, you have to come up also with your own unique questions. Over time, as a salesman, especially when you're selling SEO, you will want them to buy, you first, rather than the SEO. Because if you don't believe in it, and you don't believe in yourself, and it doesn't come out in your questions, and it doesn't come out the way you speak, there's no way they're going to go.
No, that's true. Not a line that everybody can get away with, right? Because you have to sound earnest and sincere when you ask this. And I am when I ask this. And I think that's why people buy into it, because they can hear the earnestness in your voice. They can hear the sincerity in your voice when you ask this question. And so they just want to go, yeah, let's go for it.
And this is why when we go into the next section, which is reinforcing, you don't want to end it with, okay, great, Perfect. That's the answer I was looking for. That's all for today. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
No.
Or okay, I'll send the contract into your mailbox. When am I going to get it back? Right? Something that makes the experience suddenly feel selfish.
Right. And you're going to get up. I got more questions. Boom. Here comes all the objections.
Yeah.
But what's interesting and something I picked up from Bernard as well, I keep referencing Burns in most of my learnings. Yes, he is my mentor. But essentially, you have to have a moral high ground. And at this point is you going back to how you built the desire in the first place. By understanding their needs, you're going to be able to reinforce the pitch.
Right. You're super convinced that what you're selling them is going to make their life, their business, their career better.
Exactly.
And why wouldn't you want them to leave the sale and leave it feeling good?
Yeah, and it's a great reminder why they bought it in the first place.
So part of the reason that this is here is there's this old adage, and you guys might have heard of it. It says, a fool and his gold are soon parted, or, a fool does not like parting with his gold. And that is true for most people. People don't like parting ways with their money.
Right.
And that's why a phenomenon known as buyer's remorse exists. And what you need to do as part of being a great salesman is make sure that buyer's remorse has no opportunity to kick in. So before I have Will give you guys samples, I'm going to share an experience I had in Singapore. And for any of you that are there, you might be familiar with this. There is a bookstore at the top of one of the malls there along Orchard Road. And the bookstore's name is Page One.
Page One.
It's pretty well known. And when I travel somewhere and I can get English literature books, I will go and buy English books wherever I am, especially if I run out when I travel.
Yeah.
But I had an experience here that I never had anywhere else I ever bought a book.
Right.
At Page One, while I was queuing up to check out, when I was at the checkout counter, the person that was attending to my purchase mindfully reviewed the books
that you bought.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she said, "Wow, these are great selections." Right? And I don't know if that was part of a spiel or something that they're taught to, and trained on, but it felt terrific to hear it.
Yeah.
And the first thing in my mind as a salesman, because I already was a salesman, was, wow, my people should be doing this. Because it felt terrific.
Yeah.
I left that bookstore feeling good. I bought enough books to last me the whole time I stayed there and then some.
Yeah.
And the purchasing experience was so good, I still went back to buy a couple more books.
And it was right at the moment when you handed your money.
Yeah. So it was terrific. So the bottom line is you need to prevent buyer's remorse by reinforcing the close of the sale. And here are a couple of techniques that you guys can do.
So you could say, this was a great call, and I'm grateful you were willing to share meaningful information about your business. I'm going to set up another conversation for us on X date, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again.
Right, because that's just the ABCs of sale, right? You always book your next call. You always book your next conference.
And I'm glad we got a chance to talk to find solutions for you. I wanted to tell you we're a great provider, but don't take my word for it. Our work will make that feel like an understatement.
Right. Now, this is not a question, but it is a reinforcing statement. And you're telling them, you're setting expectations to look forward to a great experience with you. Now, we're about to wrap up the conversation because we need to make time for some of your questions. But you can follow a bit.ly link where you can download the sections for overcoming objections, because I know that a lot of you guys will say, "Oh, why is there? It's a sales pitch, right? Why is there no section on overcoming objections?" Well, simply because that's another 1 to 3 hours worth of a conversation on its own. And so, in anticipation of that, we created a download link where you guys can download the overcoming objections sheet.
Right. And always remember that you can book calls with us. That's the link at the bottom, bit.ly/kickstart-call, and set up a conversation with your agency consultant. And what you can ask them to do, and you can let them know, is that if you need help on a pitch, these are sorts of the questions you want to address. So you can go for it.
Right.
But our main takeaways for this webinar is, don't offer a service, offer a solution.
Yeah. Sell the value, don't sell the commodity.
Prep before you sell, Do your homework.
Because if you haven't Googled your prospect prior to walking in, I guarantee they've Googled you.
Yeah. And then close your pitch with a commitment from the prospect.
It's about how they feel that they buy into the salesman before they buy into the sale.
Service or the sale. Reinforced by ending the conversation on a positive note.
Because everyone gets buyer's remorse, and it is your moral obligation to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Exactly. All right. Perfect.
So with that, thank you very much for joining us. And again, this has been Selling SEO the Right Way. We're now opening the floor to Q&A.
All right. So let's take a look at our first question. When I'm selling SEO, how do I justify the package when the client is asking for just getting backlinks? Now, I'll try, and of course, Bernard will do his best. But when
I will do my best.
But basically, if the client is pointing out, no, I just want backlinks, it goes back to understanding what the goals are, and then reviewing the workflows that go with those goals. Ask them why they're going after the backlinks. And if there's no real why, and it goes into more of a, well, my previous provider was giving me 100 backlinks instead of the 4 that you're asking for in that package, I'd rather go after the backlinks. Again, somebody taught them the wrong way to appreciate SEO or see SEO as for what its real value was. It's a commodity. You're talking to somebody that's treating it as a commodity.
So I'll approach this 2 ways. If someone says, I've got a client, but all they really want are backlinks, then I would tell them is, great, I can build you modules. I can build you a workflow that just gets you backlinks, right? Because like Obama, yes, we can. But when you're selling SEO, how do you justify the package versus just them getting the backlinks? It's really all about, again, it's the engine to fuel analogy, right? We can point the best backlinks. You guys can point the best backlinks to their website. But if that's a 50 horsepower engine, the backlinks are not going to go so far. And that is why, in the least, it is necessary that the sites get evaluated and that we agree with the methodology on the SEO. Part of the reason why we're still in the business is because we've done really well for our clients. We've done really well for our agency partners. And this is what we always set out to do. We try to drive results all the time. And we don't just tell them, okay, so here's the work wrapped in a nice bow and you take care of everything else. That's not the way we approach it. The package way of selling means you are taking accountability for results. If you're just pointing backlinks and doing whatever they're told, then that's great. But as soon as you've checked the boxes, your work is done. And you need to tell them, so the question is, what are you, Mr. Customer, buying? Are you looking for me to provide you with results, or are you looking for me to provide you with the work? Because if all they're looking for is the work, then don't resist it. A sale is a sale, right? If they're just looking for, no, I just want work, great. Here are backlinks.
As long as it's just work.
Right. But if what they say is, no, I'm looking for results, then great. I think you really need to leave the strategy to me. Right?
Exactly.
And that's how I would do that.
The second question is, how do I determine if I should be pushing a 6-month or 12-month contract?
12 months!
Well, it really depends on what the goals are in general.
12 months!
Well, if I got a 3-pager website, or I've got to build out 6 landing pages, and I'm going to wrap a strategy around it, I want moments where I can set goals against certain metrics, hit them first, then cross into certain modes, and build up on that first. There are going to be clients that, like I said earlier, if they've never worked with a provider before, if they have no clue what SEO is, it's doubtful that you could get them on a 12-month contract. So you want to do quick wins. Usually the first 3 months for us is the best time to actually show results.
Yeah, because it's when you get the best velocity in results.
Exactly. So getting them to appreciate the core metrics at the beginning is important. So impressions, what does impressions mean to them? And so evolving them towards conversions and sales, because the person who doesn't know SEO is going to gun for one metric. I need more phone calls. I need more sales. I need more conversions. So it depends on the goal. You can go 6, you can go 12, but it depends on where they are at that point.
I actually agree with William.
12 months.
Okay.
Is there a go-to emotional
Emotional hook that you use regularly. I do. Mine is humor. It is one of the best and cheapest to acquire emotional hooks. It makes you instantly memorable. Uh, the next thing that I go for is trust.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that I look for is mutual respect, and that's where common ground comes in. But in that order, I prioritize humor, and then trust, and then I try to establish mutual respect. But my emotional hook to a sale is typically, if I can get them to laugh, I can get them to buy.
Same with mine. Same with mine. Another question is, how did you say you can identify a business with SEO opportunities on Google?
Okay, so I'll rephrase the question. I think what the listener is actually saying is, how do I know if someone's got a first mover advantage on for SEO? And the answer is, you do a search for your product, your service, your commodity, and you take a look at the first page results. If the meta titles and the meta descriptions that appear on the SERPs on the first page all append, like they end in ...
Right.
You still have an opportunity for a first mover advantage.
It just means that most of the results on the page
are not optimized,
or probably that didn't do any SEO or never really had strong intent to optimize.
Right. And there are still industries out there that where this falls true.
Also, another thing is, if you have search terms or different variations of the keywords, try all of them.
Yeah.
Then you'll notice that, oh, they didn't go after this one. I could create this instead.
Right.
Next question is, if I haven't set follow-up meetings, when is it appropriate for me to remind and pitch again to them?
Right after you get to your office. If you haven't set up a follow-up meeting, send a thank you email that says, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Are you available for another conversation on date or a date? That's how I would do it.
Exactly. And I'm sure you're going to owe them something after that meeting. You should be able to set a meeting again to discuss it, or when you present it, or send it over.
Or you could send material that adds value or reinforces your previous message. Like, let's say it's been a couple of days and then you remember you didn't set up a follow-up meeting. What you could do is send them material with your brand on it that says, by the way, to help you appreciate the conversation we had last time, here's some material for you to go over. Would you like another conversation on X date or Y date? That's how I would do it too. I would just email them asking for another appointment, especially if you didn't acquire it right after the pitch.
Okay, last one. So you've got a few minutes left. I noticed that through the webinar that you have a prominent tone when you're going through the pitches. Is it better to be educational to the client or hard selling with, here's what we offer, or we solve this for you, et cetera, et cetera?
I would say educational, but not overpowering.
Right.
You don't want to maven in some calls it is necessary, but you don't want to maven your way through all your calls.
Right.
Being educational, yes, like meaning add genuine value, help them bring the topic of SEO, make it feel very layman, make it feel very down to earth, but I wouldn't make it highly technical. I wouldn't make the conversations highly technical. I would still focus on what emotional cues are they providing? How would they feel about the service?
Yeah.
How do they feel about the previous provider? Again, because they will not make a purchasing decision based off of how smart you are. They will make a purchasing decision based off of how they feel about you.
Right.
If you feel that geeky smart is the way to go, and I have encountered situations like that.
Yep.
Where I'd had to prove myself to be super geeky smart about SEO.
Yep.
Because it is what makes them feel good, then I do. But unless that is almost implicitly and explicitly asked for, I try to take SEO conversations just scratching the surface.
Right.
Because I don't want to overwhelm. I try to be educational but not overwhelming.
Yeah. And just a peek, lift the veil a bit, just give them a glimpse of it, but not really push for it.
And I guess with that, we've really sort of run out our clock. We've got a couple more questions in. And they've been really terrific. If you guys have more questions that we didn't get to answer, feel free to send us an email to info@seoreseller.com, and we would be more than happy to respond to your questions. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been Bernard
and Will.
And this has been Selling SEO the Right Way. Till next time.
Bye, guys.